Hello everyone, and welcome to the third exercise, Introduction to Programming with Java. Today we will cover a very important and very interesting topic that is in the heart of the Java programming. This is object-oriented programming. So today, first we will go through big picture, then we will come to our learning by doing practice, and then afterwards I will explain you some homework. So the moving towards our object-oriented programming is one of our 6 topics, and within Java Foundation exams we are covering in this exercise Java methods, working with Java data types and classes and constructors. Within OCP Part 1 exam we are covering creating and using methods and creating a simple Java program. So today in our exercise we will cover the following 3 big topics that will be split into several smaller topics. These are classes and objects, variables and methods, and at the end we will just talk about a bit about built-in classes. So what are classes and objects? This is very important topic since the whole Java concept is built around classes concept. So just imagine that you have a class car. So you have a car, this is blueprint or a template class that has some specific attributes like company, type, model, color. So attributes you will see in different sources. They're also called data, they're also called variables and attributes. This is all the same. At the same time, the class has methods that are describing behavior of objects. For example, move, stop, turn right, turn left. So these attributes and methods, they belong to the class car here. And then you are instantiating, initializing objects. Object is an instance of a class, so you can have multiple objects that come from one class. And all those multiple objects, they can use the methods and variables, so the data and behavior that were already defined in a class. Let us come to another example. For example, we have here the car, and this is a class. In this class, you see this already known to you structure. So you have, for example, brand, model, and color data or attributes for this car, for this template, blueprint. And then you also define some specific methods that can be used by this car. When you are instantiating objects, for example, you want to instantiate 3 objects like this, then you are setting the values for those variables that you defined already in a class individually to each object. So in this way, you are creating once a class, and then you are creating objects as instance of this class that are using those methods and variables. So let us come to an example in our Eclipse software. So we will first create a class that is called Swan. And we will also use our main method, creation. So now we are defining, I see that this is created not in a proper way. If you want to rename a class that was, if you just wrote something different, then you can always use this refactor and then rename, and you are putting here the correct name. When you click finish, all references will be updated automatically. And now you see here's one, and automatically the name, the class name is also updated. Very important, those two names must be identical in order so that your program run. So we are declaring and initializing a variable number of x, and this variable, this is the data that our class has. And actually that's also, we have a class 1, and this one class has integer variable number of x. When you want to instantiate an object, so you want to create instance of a class, you need to follow the 5 very simple steps. So the step 1, you need to declare the data type that you are creating. Creating instance of a class, that is object. First declare the data type that you are creating. So in our case, the data type of object is the name of a class, and this is swan1. The second step is to give a name to a variable. Let us call the new object mother. Number 3, put equal sign. We are putting here equal sign. Number 4, putting keyword new. And number 5, you are writing class name and putting parentheses. The class name is swan and putting parentheses. So actually swan here, this is a constructor, and we will cover constructors later in this exercise. So now only with this one single line you have created an instance of a class. That is, you have created an object mother. So now you can access the variables with this object mother, the variables that were as that now belong to this object. So the variables that belong to the class that are defined in class swan01, or actually it should be swan01 everywhere, because we have here 01. So for example, we want to access the variable number of x, and this is how we do it. And now we can assign a value 1. So here we initialized and set variable, and we want to print this variable to our console. And you are using the name of an object, and then you are putting dot, and you are writing the variable name. And that's all. Now when you execute the code, then you receive this value of this variable printed out to our console. So this is how you can very easily instantiate an object, how you can create an object of a class. Usually it is advised to separate the class and the program. So the class, you see that the class is here. The definition of a class is before your main method. So in the class, you usually should put all the data and all the methods that refer to your class. And everything that concerns your object, this should be put into program. And now we will do this. So now we will copy this code. I will put it here, verse 102. It is here, and we will create a new class. We'll create a class with name Swan Program 02. We will now show we want to split now the window, and this is how we can do this. So we have now in the left part we have our class, and in the right part we have our program. So we take out our main method that should be in our program, and we leave here only our class variables and class methods. So in our case, we have only one integer variable that was declared here, and everything else is now here. So for example, we do want to create other object, and this is the child. So we are doing in the same way. We are writing first the data type. This is the name of our class. Now we are writing the name of our object child, new, and we are using constructor method, and now we have new object child. Now if we want to assign the variable of number of x that belongs to a child object, now value 0, and for this purpose we are accessing this variable with child dot before. And we want to print this statement to the console too. And now we have 1 and 0. So this is how you are separating the classes. You're separating class and the program. So class is here, everything that describes class, all the attributes and behaviors are written here, and your main method with your objects, they are written in program. So how your program will find your the corresponding class, because in this package, for example, you have a lot of codes. As me, I suppose, it is finding it with the name, the proper name of the class. This should be identical. Those two names should be identical. The next example that I would like to show you is student example, and I will close my windows here. Here, student now. So now we have in this example a lot of variables already defined for us. Student ID, study semester, gender, grades, first name. You see that some variables are only declared some variables are already initialized. We have also one array here, and then we have a method here that is calculating average grade. And this is how this grade is calculated. And even one array is already defined here inside. And at the end, we have our main method with an object. So we created a new student with the name S. That is now object. So first what we would do, first we would like to write this code in a proper way. That is, we would like to separate the class and the objects and the main method. So we'll write it as 0, 2. This is our class. And we are creating new class student program 0, 2. We will also put these two codes near each other. And we will take now this main method out and put it to our program. We will save both codes. So you see now that our object here, student S, is created, and this is created in the main program, and everything that we need for our class definition is defined here. This object encapsulates data that are defined in this class. We can also access the variables that are defined in a class that also already belong to the student with object in an object way. So it means that when we want to access any variable for object, we need to put s and dot. So let us, for example, create several printing conditions, printing statements that will show us how this works. So first, let us access this variable. First one, student ID. S dot, and you are putting just student. So we have here an arrow, it should be T here, and we are also putting here student ID. If we print it, we have first the grade calculated, that is stated here, and then we have student ID. That is now 0, since we did not assign any value for students. So now it is taking the default value that was assigned in a class. So if we want to access other variables, for example, study, semester, you are doing this in the same way, putting s with dot before. If we want to access gender, you also putting s dot, and the same for other variables. So when you will print, then you will see that all these values are still the default values that were assigned automatically after the declaration. So actually you should here, after the instantiation of your object, you should initialize those variables and assign object-specific values to those variables. The data that are written here in our class, They can be accessed directly, as we did it now, just using the object name and dot. However, it is advised to access the variables with methods. And for this purpose, the setters and getters methods are used, and we will cover those methods in our next exercise. For now, you just have to remember that accessing of variables or changing the variable values that are already defined in a class is better to do with special methods designed for this purpose. So from this part, you need to remember how to instantiate an object, how to create a template of a class, a template where you are creating first all your variables for the class, and next all the methods that belong to the class, and next how to create an object or how to create an instance of this class. And this you are doing with one line. The next, what we are going to cover are variables and methods. The variables, they can have, there are three types of them: instance variables, class variables, and final variables. And the variable scope is also divided into local, parameter, and instance variables. So first, let's start with our variables. Let us close these windows. And we are creating now a class with the name book. We will create already a class and separate program class, the main method. So first we are creating now a class that is a blueprint of all objects, and our book class has the following variables. The first one is string title, and we are putting default value already, unknown title. Next variable is array of strings with the name authors, and we are already now initializing this array with value anonymous. The next is integer variable years released. That is 2014. And the next integer are copies sold. That is for now 0. This is how we defined our variables in our class. We will not have any other methods in our class, so we can save it. And now we are creating a program that is called book program. With the main method. So first what we want to do, we want to create objects. So the same as you are creating variables, first you are declaring variables and then you are initializing variables. In the same way, you can first declare objects and then initialize objects. So first we will now declare object, that is book. So first we are writing data type. This is the name of the class book01. So I have already book, that's why it didn't show me an arrow. However, please check always that those two are always equal. The name of the object will be book1, and that's all. Here we declared, and now we are initializing object. So you see that it looks pretty similar to how we do it for primitive data type variables. Book1 is new book. Here we're using constructors. So these variables that we defined here in a class, they are called instance variables. They're also called member variables or fields in a class. So these variables we will write here, they are instance variables, that is, they are defined in a class. And now we would like to access this instance variable with our object. And for this purpose, we are writing the object name. And now we are writing the, for example, title. And we are assigning a new title to this object, beginning Java. This book.title, this variable title, this is instance variable. In the same way, you could assign other variables, other names for authors instead of anonymous, other year released, and so on, using here this way of accessing of variables. We can now initialize another object. So in order to declare a new object, we could write now the same line like book01. I will just write it first here. Book01, book2. This would be valid. However, you can also put it here in order to save some time. And this is very similar as when you were defining like integer variable a, that, and then b. So it looks the same. And the syntax is also the same. And now we can assign, we can first initialize. This is new book. And again, here should be 01. And here should be also 01. And book1, book2. Title is some kind of story. So this variable title is instance variable, and this instance variable is now accessed with the help of object, the help of book1 dot or book2 dot syntaxes. The next variable next variables are class variables. So class variables are the variables that are shared between all objects of the class, and they are also called static variables. And when you are declaring these variables, you are putting the word static at the beginning. These variables, then they can be accessed with the help of object name and also class name. However, they should be accessed by class name. So we'll come to this in a second. So first, let us say that we have one more variable, and this is class variable. That's why we are putting the keyword static at the beginning. This is integer, maximum amount of pages, and let us say this value equals 500. So now we told the Java that this variable, integer, maximum amount of pages, is static. That means that this variable is shared by all of these objects. This variable usually the class variables are used to the variables that should not be changed. So this they can be changed, but they should not be. So this 500 should be maximum amount of pages for all these books. When you want to access the book, let us say we have another object. So let us declare book 01 super large book. It's a new book. So you see I have a lot of numbers afterwards, after the book, because I have a lot of codes and I need to differentiate between them. But in your case, you can just create just other classes with other names. So here we have declared and initialized the object. And now we, in the same way as we were accessing our variables, so super large, from the class with our object name, we can access them here. So title, super large book, and so on. Of course, you can access in the same way all other variables. However, we are interested now in class variable. So let us say that we would like to access this variable. So first we will try to access it with the class with object name. That is, we are putting the object name dot and then maximum amount of pages. Let us put this better in our system, in our println statement. Okay. And now you see that Eclipse shows you some note and suggests you to like several options what you could do. And the reason why it tells you that this is not, it is not red, it is just yellow, it tells you that this is not appropriate. So because the class variables, the static variables, they should be accessed in a static way. What does it mean? It means that, like translated into say it in other words, class variables should be access it with class name. That is that what we have written here should be the same variable should be accessed with the name of our class, book01. And now you see that everything is all right. So what do you have to remember about class variable is that class variable is defined with keyword static, and class variable should be accessed also for objects with class name. The next variable is final variable. The final variable is the variable that is usually used for constant values, and the value of this variable cannot be changed. So let us create another variable that is final variable. And for final variable, you usually you do put the keyword final at the beginning, and then let us say that you have string owner that equals to Humboldt University. Final variables. The convention is that you write the name of this variable in capital letters, and you have to put the keyword final at the beginning. And now let us try to access. So let us try first to access this variable. Of course, now it is not static variable, so we are accessing this variable with object name that is super large book. And here we have owner. So when we print it, we see here HU, Humboldt University. Now let us try to change the value of this variable. So we will copy the super large book owner, and we will try to assign it another owner. And you will immediately receive an error from Eclipse that you with some suggestions. So the first one, to remove final modifier, because you cannot change the value of final variable. That is a constant variable. So we have covered now instance, class and final variables, and let us come to the scope, to the variable scope. Let us create a new class with the name variable scope. Let us assume that we have the following variables. The first one is final variable, final static, so final class variable, integer, maximum length that equals to 5. So this, I will close this one. This is, just remember, this is class variable, since we have here keyword static. And we have integer length that we will declare. This variable here is instance variable. That is, this variable is in the class definition. And we will now add a method that is of void type. That means that this method does not return any value. Public void, the name of the method is grow, and this method takes one parameter of integer type, inches, and we have inside one if statement. If length is less than maximum length, then we will calculate the new size, that is length plus inches. And length will be assigned the value of new size. So here we see now that first we have here our instance variable, and next we have inside of the method one parameter, inches, and this is our parameter variable. And inside of the method we have new variable, new size, that is called local variable, and this local variable can be accessed only here inside of this method. If you would try to access this variable outside of this grow method, then you would receive an error. So this is actually the all. We have here instance variable, parameter inside of the method or loop, and inside of method itself we have local variables. So these are the variables that are declared and initialized inside and will not be used outside. And the next topic that we will discuss now is about methods.